Our own draft predictor, as well as Caesars Sportsbook, sees the third pick as the potential landing spot for Tua. That, again, does not fly with practically any of the mock drafts that we've heard. Mel will have his most recent one coming up later, live here on Get Up. But you see Tua's numbers there. They still believe that the 3 pick is the most likely spot. So with that thought in mind, let's start it this morning with Schefter and Laura. And Schefter, I'm coming to you. We think we know what's happening at 1 and 2. We've been saying for months the draft starts at 3. So what are we hearing about what happens after the first 2 picks?
I think there's a lot more talk from other people than there is between the Lions and Dolphins and Giants about swapping and moving picks. I think right now, we'll see if the phone lines heat up. In talking to a team in the top 5 last night, they think today could get active. But up until now, it's been fairly quiet. There's been some regular contact, some preliminary calls, but nothing that's heated up. No agreements in place, no extensive trade talks. And right now, the Dolphins are scheduled to be at 3. The Lions are scheduled to be at 3. The Giants at 4. The Dolphins at 5. I think when tonight rolls around, I think it'll be that way again tonight, Greeny. And the question becomes, where does Tua go? And I still think, as I've said this week, 5 and 6 are the most likely landing spots. I don't believe he makes it out of the top 10. I don't believe he makes it past 6 tonight, because between 5 and 6, those 2 teams have quarterback needs, quarterback questions, and I think they like Tua. So to me, one of them winds up taking him tonight. I don't know which one finally will, but I think one of them will tonight, and Tua will wind up playing or being drafted in the top 6 picks tonight somewhere along the way.
Again, the Dolphins are at 5 and the Chargers are at 6. Laura, you are our Tua correspondent. The day is finally here. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I'm with Schefty in that I don't think Tua gets past that 5 or 6 spot. It's really interesting to talk about, what could happen maybe ahead of that. But right now it seems like 5 and 6 is where we really should be looking at. But here's something to keep an eye on. Let's say that Tua, for whatever reason, starts to fall in this draft. I know that there are a few teams out there that are keeping a very close eye on that, specifically if he starts to fall. And let's just throw some things out there. I'm not reporting this as news, but these are just some ideas that are out there. Let's talk about the Raiders, for instance, a team that has some draft capital because they have a couple of first-round picks. Let's say they could find a suitor to trade with Derek Carr, a trade partner for Derek Carr. They marry Marcus Mariota and Tua Tagovailoa potentially in a quarterback room, 2 guys that have been friends for all this time. Tua looks up to Mariota, loves him. The Polynesian community is big out there, and we know that John Gruden loves the next quarterback the most. So who knows? He's got the ability to take some risks, and there are some things out there where you could see some stuff start to happen.
Schefter, what do you think?
If Tua gets past 6, then the draft gets really interesting. I just don't see that happening tonight. 5 and 6 are the spots that we've looked at all along. And if he somehow finds a way to get past those 2 teams, well, now you bring the Raiders into the mix. Now you bring the Jaguars into the mix. Could the Patriots wind up making a bold play up? But he would have to get past pick 6 in my mind before it gets really interesting. Those 2 teams, the Dolphins and Chargers, are sitting there with the first crack at these quarterbacks tonight. Tua, Herbert, Jordan Love, and I do think the Dolphins do like Jordan Love, and it's a question of what they wind up doing at those 2 particular spots. 5 and 6, to me, is where it begins. Again, we'll see if there's some trade activity that picks up today, but going into this morning, Greeny, there was not any agreement, and there's not a lot of chatter that something could happen.
Schefter, you mentioned Tua, and you have mentioned Jordan Love. You did not mention in that, and perhaps that was not done purposely, but Justin Herbert's name. Tua, do you expect Tua and Herbert to go 5, 6 in either order? Do you believe Herbert also goes out in the first 6 picks?
Again, Greeny, I think a lot would depend on what the Dolphins do. I think that there are varying degrees. If the Dolphins went Tua and the Chargers were looking at Herbert, I don't think that would be a problem for them. If the Dolphins went with a positional player like an offensive tackle and surprised people, and then the Chargers had one of those quarterbacks, well, one of them is going to start sliding then. So again, I think it's up to the Dolphins. And then what if all of a sudden the Dolphins pull a surprise and go Jordan Love earlier than anybody thought, the way the Giants went Daniel Jones earlier than anybody thought? And I think the one thing that you hear when talking to other teams in and around the Dolphins selection is they've done a great job of keeping it quiet. They really have not let on. A lot of times you can figure out or scout out what a team might be thinking or doing. They have been remarkably reserved in what they've done with that 5th overall pick.
And quickly, just to sort of finish up here, Laura, I'm sure there are a lot of people watching this morning as they're getting set for the draft who have not been with us over the course of the last few weeks. Tua, all of his progress from the injuries and everything else is, if anything, ahead of schedule, and he figures to be ready to play if and when the season starts on time. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what the doctors say, the doctors who are close to this. And look, the NFL agreed upon an unaffiliated doctor, Dr. Thomas Bird in Nashville, who is a renowned hip expert, to reevaluate Tua just a few weeks ago. And his report back from that, we're talking about an in-depth MRI and looking at Tua, was overwhelmingly positive. And in fact, the doctors close to this, one of them who did the surgery and another one who's been part of this the whole time is Alabama's orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Lyle Kane, has said repeatedly that they feel as though he will be ready for next season, whenever that would be.
Schefter?
Hey, Greeny, one other thing. The Dolphins, to their credit, we talked about how private they've been. One of the things they have done that hasn't been reported is they've made calls to the Bengals to try to trade up to number 1. And the Bengals have made it very clear to the Dolphins and anybody else that did call, and I don't think there were very many at all, that they're not trading out of that pick, that the Bengals are holding on to that pick. But the Dolphins did reach out and did make multiple attempts to contact the Bengals to see if there would be any interest in trading that number 1 overall pick, and the Dolphins were told no.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.